Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in and listening. We have kind of an interesting show. Things are not looking good, whatever, over in the Middle East. And this thing is a powder keg, and they can explode at any moment. So we're just bringing you the news as we have it, and Larry has it. Hi, Larry. How you doing?
Hey, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
Oh, hey, no problem. Glad you could get on here because you're the one who usually follows this a lot closer than I do. Before we started, though, I wanted to go over something. It's the timelines, and although we've hit it before, there are some things here that I want to bring to people's attention. The first thing I want to talk about is the Feast of Tabernacles, which is really a feast of ingathering for Israel. And it's connected basically also to the Exodus, or leaving Egypt. It's kind of a celebration of being released out of Egypt. That's God's people in their miraculous escape. As you remember, they crossed the sea, and it was held at bay while they went across. Okay, and it also marks the end of harvest. Now, here's something that I got out of an Israeli or rabbi website. In the days of the Temple of Jerusalem, all Israelites and later Jewish men, women, and children went on pilgrimage to Jerusalem, for the festival would gather in the temple courtyard on the first day of Sukkot to hear the Jewish king read selections from the Torah. This ceremony, which was mandated in Deuteronomy as well, 31:10 through 13, was held every 7 years in the year following a Shemitah, or sabbatical year. The ceremony has been discontinued with the destruction of the temple. One of the reasons I'm bringing all this stuff up, and especially tabernacles, is the timelines and why maybe all of this is happening now over in the Middle East. I think we're headed for war. I think Larry would agree, unless the Lord holds his hand up and says not yet, and there's a further delay, which there can be. We're heading into something very, very deadly. From 9/23/2015, remember when Obama and the Pope shook hands in Washington, D.C., at exactly 9:23 in the morning. That was all staged. You may remember that they said, well, the Pope had been delayed. No, he wasn't delayed. They delayed it on purpose so that the handshake would occur on 9/23/2015. And that had to do with the establishment of the United Nations Agenda 21/30/50. That's what this was all about. But anyway, from 9/23/2015 to 9/23/2018 to the Feast of Tabernacles exactly is 3 years. I would advise people to get out their Strongs and look up the number 3. Biblically, it means resurrection. From 9/23/2017 in the star sign, which I believe you can prove was very authentic, is not so much by the alignment of the planets, although that was a very historical event. It's more related, I believe, to the Conception Comet, which most people are not aware even existed. It's the first time ever in history that comet, which had hung out for a long, long time, spinning around, suddenly goes into Virgo at the identical same time that Jupiter enters the womb of Virgo. And then it leaves. So that's why it's called the Conception Comet. And then, of course, we had Jupiter's birth. So the 923 sign was a valid sign. A lot of people have mocked it. They've said, well, nothing happened. And and blah, 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 blah. Well, it really was a very, very unusual sign. A lot of people, of course, were very, very disappointed, as I was, really, and I'm sure others were, that absolutely nothing appeared to happen on that time in 2017. But here's what's interesting. From 9/23/2017 in the star sign to the Feast of Trumpets, or rather, which was the Feast of Trumpets on 9/23/2017, we go to 9/23/2018. Guess what it is? First day of Tabernacles. It appears very much to be a one-year warning, sort of like what Noah was given. Then from 8/27 to 2018, the lunar red moon over Jerusalem, to 9/11 was 47 days, which adds up to 11. Lunar tetrads bookended. Now this is where the important part comes in. The lunar tetrads bookended Passover and Tabernacles in 2014 and 2015. But this is different this time. 9/23/2017 in the star sign on trumpets to the Tabernacles on 9/23/2018 is 1 year. Why I should say, is atonement, the Feast of Atonement, missing or being passed over. In other words, it appears that the star sign to Tabernacles bookends the last 3 feast days, but omitting atonement. Why is it being passed over? And the answer has to be because Israel has to atone for Jacob's trouble. It's another sign that we are about to enter Jacob's trouble. What do you think, Larry?
I think the timing's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's just, I just have to say really timely. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because I think people need to know that there's more to this than just, military skirmish over there in Israel. We don't know if this is really going to go live or not, but everything indicates that it is. And here's an email I got, or comment. General Mattis warned last weekend that the homeland, you're talking about USA, needs to prepare because we're not secure from attacks from China from the west and Russia from the east coast. Now, this is very, very interesting in view of the prophecies in Jeremiah 50, 51, Isaiah 47, et cetera. What's your latest, Larry? We've had a lot of things going down here when it comes to communications problems. All kinds of things are happening. You had an event down there. What happened down there with the post office?
Yeah, it's been a very bizarre day. You know, I got a notice from that our local banks were having cyber problems, and you couldn't access anything at the banks or even in the mobile mode. And then also I went to the post office today, and I was informed that all the postal government computers were down, and they wasn't up and running. So that kind of dovetails really into the information that came out Hal Turner posted, indicating a lot of problems with satellites, especially government websites, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, what do you make of that? It looks to me like they're either practicing or they're going dark because they don't want anybody to leak out vital information that there's maybe an attack underway or they're preparing for something. We'll get into some of that later, but it appears to me that if you're going to have CIA mainframes go down, you're going to have your spy satellites go offline. And this is what he says: 7 mainframe computers inside the CIA are now offline for an unknown reason. The loss of computing has also caused a significant number of U.S. spy satellites to also go offline. Then he updates it. Numerous communication satellites are now going down as well. We are in potential danger. I hope your vehicles have fuel and you have emergency food and water on hand, because there's no telling who did this or why. And now that some of our satellites are going down, God only knows what may be coming at us. Then he updates that again, and he says, Corona satellites are the digital keyhole replacement for the original decommissioned program of the same name. They are offline. What do you make of this? Who would be benefiting to do this? Are they going to simultaneously attack like Red Elk saw? Are we going to suffer an invasion as well at the same time, do you think?
Well, it's we're in quite a quandary, because the main question I have is who did it, and the problem is, especially the problem in the USA, is we got as many enemies probably within the USA as we do outside it. If anybody knew the truth.
Absolutely.
So it could be the Chinese, it could be the Koreans, it could be Iran, it could be Russia, it could be all of the above. It could also be, and this is something I'd like your opinion on, because we're at such a critical juncture. We're about to somehow go live, if the accusation from Russia is right, with a false flag chemical attack in Syria. And we do know that there are verifications that Israel and U.S. forces around Syria are ready to go in, and that the U.S. and especially Israel has been running air cover for any operation that goes off. So this is what's interesting. We know that apparently from data we've received and talked about is that Trump uses specifically military intelligence. But however, the CIA has their own intelligence. I hate to use that misnomer, but they have something. And if you got to remember, too, under Bush and Obama, number one, under Bush, the intel agencies let him down and gave him bad information, it appears. And on the other hand, the intel agencies under Obama didn't give Obama any information, because he really didn't want any, except if they would spy on Donald Trump running for president. So Here we are. We've got other countries outside the U.S. that would like to bring us down and attack us, and we also have a scenario where Trump versus the monster, the swamp monster. So it's like this. Who's doing the actual false flag? Who has set that up? If it's the CIA, which is generally the ones that do false flags, are really good at it, then is it our own military folks that have somehow pulled the plug on the CIA where they can't actually cause the event to occur maybe, or have to delay it? Or is it the CIA group pulling some kind of a false flag or a game change on Trump? See what I mean? There's too many variables, Stuart. What do you think?
Yeah, there are a lot of variables. The other variable, and the big variable, is the God factor. If we are going to be subjected to an attack, maybe the Lord himself is pulling all this stuff. But it doesn't appear that way, because I think he would make the whole nation go black. And this is a warning too, folks, by the way. If everything goes down and your comm systems all go down, your computers go down, your cell phones go down, then I think you could safely say that we're going to be under attack. Now, whether this is a EMP attack or whatever it is, but what they'd like to do is isolate communications. Yeah, Larry, we don't know who's doing it. But why would all the post office stuff be going down? Why would banking outfits go down? Just looked on AT&T. They have a website, and if I remember right, a lot of major cities were also having all kinds of telephone problems. And as far as I know, there is not a major CME event taking place. So this looks like it's a, how do we say, a practice run perhaps? Could they be practicing? Or are we going live with something? What do you think?
Well, that's the thing, Stuart. Until we actually have the false flag or an event or the beginnings of a war, it could be any of the above. I mean, literally any of the above. And like I said, the variables are so multiplied in America because of the just insanity that's occurring. We really don't know who's pulling the plug here and there or causing the problems. But, you know, and we'll get into it in a few minutes. We hadn't talked about the Middle East really well yet, but also we've got another flashpoint to talk about, too, that could almost erupt at any time.
Yeah, I know. This is Hal Turner again. Just spoke to the Pentagon. The official line is, I have no information about any such event. But if such an event were to occur, we would not discuss it publicly. So they're not going to tell you anyway. Then the latest one he has is sources from the intelligence community are now confirming to me several mainframes are in fact offline. Spy satellites are dark. Techs are working furiously to find out what happened and attempting to fix it. Internal assessment thinking someone has targeted our spy satellite system specifically. Someone is now moving certain things they don't want us to see are being moved, which would, of course, be military moves. This unexpected eventuality is a major trouble on every level. Then the next update. Let's see. UK government satellite ground stations, eavesdropping centers located on the Cornwall coast at Cleve Camp. It is operated by British Signals Intelligence, officially known as Government Communications Headquarters. And I guess that's gone down. All kinds of lingering and communication satellites have now been compromised as well. Then he updated, they have set to DEFCON 4. The military's gone to DEFCON 4. So there's something in the wind, and if they don't know who's doing it, then we got a problem, major problem, which may dovetail into the other stuff that we really should move into, I guess, at this point. The latest news from Israeli News Live, just reported by Israeli News Live, things in the Middle East were about to go hot. All power mysteriously cut out, this is from you, in Oklahoma, Mountain Gateway, out for hours. So we've had a lot of interrupted. They haven't been out for any length of time, but it's kind of weird that there are power outages going on. Then there's this one, change in rhetoric. Now says that any provocations in Syria could cause the USA to invade. What do you think? They're changing their tune a little bit. They're saying, well, it doesn't have to be a false flag now. Maybe we could just go in if there's provocations that we don't like. What's your latest on that?
Well, what's interesting about false flags, Stuart, we know over the years that sometimes getting the warning about a false flag about to happen literally, I guess you could say, puts a quietus on the false flag. In other words, you can actually preempt or prevent a false flag by getting information out. But, you know, that's what's happening right now is the fact that information, and my wife and I both have really watched mainstream news yesterday and today closely, and also like Facebook, the Internet, et cetera, et cetera. And listen, it is vanilla. There is literally what we're talking about tonight and what we spoke on last night on our short update. It's not on the news. The only one that's carrying, and One American News just a while ago broke the story of the assassination of the, that general or leader, in the Ukraine. And so this is just kind of coming out, but really the algorithms and it appears that the Corporation of America basically has the ability to censor America.
Oh, yeah, we're getting virtually no news at all. And, of course, the conservative viewpoints have now been virtually eliminated. Trump has made a few comments about he's going to go after it, but not before the election. So I think we're headed into trouble that way. And with this assassination, this reminds me of World War I. Over there in the Balkans, where they had an assassination, and that led to the war. Now, I understand that since this assassination of a Putin buddy, really, I guess they were comrades at arms, so to speak, this would infuriate Putin. And let's get into this, because it appears as though, here it is from Hal Turner's site, serious developments in the Ukraine. Armed forces are now moving. Over the past 24 hours, the unstable situation in eastern Ukraine has gotten demonstrably worse. A high-ranking leader of the breakaway province was assassinated via improvised explosive device, or an IED, detonated in a cafe where he was eating breakfast, and I guess it killed several others of his leadership. So the Speaker of Russia's Duma said the agreements are now pointless. Russian President Putin expressed his personal condolences, and Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated ominously, Kiev has now chosen the way of bloody conflict. Who do you suppose would gain the most by the assassination of a Putin supporter?
If you're asking me, the answer to that is Putin. If he's been wanting to invade Ukraine for some time, and we were wondering on the last radio program we did, Stuart, why thousands of Chinese tanks and troops were going by railroad from the east, going west, entering Russia and moving across Russia. We were also wondering the information we saw of Russian tanks on rail cars going west towards Ukraine. And this was before the assassination, Stuart. Now, that makes it suspect as far as I'm concerned, because, I've read it. Now, I've stayed at a Holiday Inn one time years ago, and I have read some books. And some of the Tom Clancy novels that are continuing, they have literally laid out wars and an invasion of Ukraine, basically using this same scenario, using bombs. It's unbelievable. You wonder how a guy that writes a fiction novel has that kind of information. And but the only thing I'm saying is that apparently, and according to, if you read a little more of Hal Turner there, it talks about those tanks going into the area of Donetsk and the Ukraine border, and they're just waiting orders from Putin, the Russians, and I guess they call it Donetsk Republic or whatever there, to actually begin an invasion of Ukraine. You may want to read a little more of that, but we were wondering why all the tanks going west, because west is Ukraine and NATO, Europe.
Well, the latest that I heard from Israeli Live News, he was wondering the same thing. The Vostok Exit 2018 exercise was supposed to take place in the eastern military district of Russia, but now it appears that almost all of those assets are being moved to the southern military district, which borders basically Turkey in that area, and to the Ukraine area. Now, remember the Catholic prophecy that said that, I can't tell anybody to believe it, but it's kind of interesting that this was many years ago, I guess, that the woman gave this prophecy, and others have verified it as well through prophecies they were given, that Russia will make a blitzkrieg move across Europe. And Putin may have now decided, look, Trump isn't in control of his own government anymore. He's been surrounded by deep state. Congress passed a law, I can't remember what the number of it is, which basically totally dethrones Trump and puts Congress in total control, totally lawless, but then everything is lawless now. I mean, Mueller and all that stuff is totally unconstitutional, totally lawless, and yet nobody's doing anything about it. So it really doesn't make any difference. It's interesting that Babylon the Great is called a lawless nation, totally lawless. And the final leader, which I firmly believe will be Barack Hussein Obama, has been called, a number of Christians were shown, he's the lawless one. So I guess we all just wait and see what happens. But here's what he says here. Armed forces are on the move, and things appear to be severely escalating. Trainloads of Russian tanks have already arrived near the border of eastern Ukraine and are being swiftly unloaded. Troops from Russia's eastern and central military districts have now been diverted from the upcoming military exercise Vostok 2018 and are being sent to the Ukraine border. That's ominous, Larry.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow. And trainloads of T-62 tanks. Now, he's not even talking about the Chinese tanks. So, I don't know. I think we're headed for a lot of trouble. States of emergency declared by authorities in DPR reports that a decision to mobilize forces is expected to come in hours. So it almost appears as though with the assassination, whether Putin did it or the CIA did it or whoever did it, I mean, we know deep state wants a war. So, and remember when Putin at a press conference said World War III was inevitable and it was not going to be stopped. And Obama made the same remark, worded slightly different, but he said he could not stop World War III. So I would remind everybody of Psalm 2 and the timelines that we're in, because we're coming up on the 70th year of Israel. And, this is very, very serious stuff. And they're in the highest state of readiness following the assassination of their leader. So this assassination was not just something that didn't matter. Larry, Gaza Strip, faction leaders are all going into hiding. What is going on there?
Well, this is a mode of operation that has been used numerous times. The leadership in Gaza and the Gaza Strip go underground or go into hiding about the time the missiles are going to fly towards Israel. Now, that's what's interesting. What we've got going on today is we know there's more trouble. I think something like 190 or 80, something like that, was wounded today. They're still riding on the Israeli border. But now suddenly it appears, if that information's true, that the leadership is all went into hiding and went underground. That indicates that missiles will fly from Gaza into Israel very soon. Now, at the same time, we've got reports from Depka File, and we've got reports coming out of I believe the Times of Israel, reporting that Israeli assets are moving to the Lebanese border That's the Israeli-Lebanon border. Now that's the border between Israel and Hezbollah forces. Now Hezbollah forces also have been practicing an invasion of Israel, and they're the ones that has thousands of missiles pointed to fire at Israel. So here's the deal. You know, I don't have the answer, but I have the question. Is it by chance imminent that there's a flashpoint, a false flag, or what have you in Syria that brings on an attack? Because at the same time we're talking about this, Iran, along with the Syrians and Hezbollah and the rebels and Russians, are moving in a line towards Idlib, and you're familiar with that, and it appears there's going to be a confrontation with U.S. troops and them, and the U.S., as a report out of the Middle East, has asked for Israeli air cover in this operation, and Israel has agreed. So my question is, has Iran decided maybe to preempt that battle and start the missiles flying at Israel so she cannot give air cover to U.S. forces in Syria? Or is it possible that this flashpoint is going to happen and if the missiles are going to fly? So what do you think, Stuart?
Well, you know, it's very, very interesting that now we're watching the alignments all take place that were in Bible prophecy. We have not only Russia and Putin, we have China, and we have North Korea, and now Turkey is part of this Idlib, or however you pronounce that province, in Syria. They're rolling in their tanks and their armaments and their troops, as well as Russian troops, and they say now that the number of troops that Russia has in there, and China has in there, and Iran has in there, and also probably some North Koreans as well, is much larger than has ever been reported. This battle for Idlib, or however you want to pronounce that, is probably the battle that will trigger World War III. And there is absolutely no question that the naval operations that are going on with France, the UK, the USA, China, and Iran, by the way, and Russian military navy operations, how can this not go into a full-scale war? Now we have the Ross, the ship named Ross, sitting kind of all by itself, and they were wondering if possibly this was going to be a sacrificial ship where Russia or somebody else would sink it, and that would give the American people, you know, then they could come back and say, look at what they've done to us, and we got to go get them, just like they've done before. And then the war is on. But it appears to me that, you know, we had Putin meeting with all of these leaders that are now involved in all of this. Not, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks before all of this took place.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems to me that if you read Psalm 2, that there's been some decisions made. And maybe we are, you know, folks, you have to look at this from afar. You have to kind of pretend you're on the moon and you're looking at what's going on Earth through a telescope, and you're listening to the rhetoric. And when you do that, when you distance yourself from it, you get a whole different picture of what's really going on and what Psalm 2 is really all about. The main goal of Psalm 2 is to get rid of Jesus Christ, God the Father, and the Holy Ghost, and set up a whole new world religion. Albert Pike and the Third World War was to start a fight between Islam and Judaism and Christianity, and out of the ruins would come this new Luciferian world order. Boy, I think we're right on the doorstep of Albert Pike's Third World War starting. It just seems very, how do I say, unusual? And I use that word unusual for the comm systems to be going down, for telephone systems to be going down, for postal computers going down, for bank computers going down. This is what they can do. You wake up Monday morning and all your money is gone. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 days. I'm suspicious also of a possible EMP attack, which would neutralize the United States for quite a while. But that may be a little premature. They might want to do that a little later. But anyway, what do you think? I'm just very, very suspicious. There's too many little odd things that are happening, and then we have that assassination, and we have all this military operation of Russia, the largest ever. China's moving in with it. I don't know. We've seen a lot of exercises go live, haven't we?
Well, that's true, Stuart. We have, and what's interesting, too, is you were talking about the naval situation. Now, the supposed Russian naval drills in the Mediterranean, this is the 31st, tomorrow's the 1st. Really, actually, the 1st will be tonight in Israel, and that's when the war games begin, September the 1st, which is tonight, in Israel, here. What's interesting is Turkey also has sent some of their ships to support the Russian ships. So here we have a NATO ally that is really leaning more towards the Russians and Iran and others than he is, with NATO. That's really bizarre. And at the same time,
we know that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, in case anybody wonders who was killed or assassinated in Ukraine, it was the pro-Moscow rebel leader Alexander Zakarchino, and one of his deputies was killed with him, and possibly others wounded. But it was, it's not the first assassination that would ever start a war. But what's so interesting, Stuart, and my question is, have we ever before seen thousands of, according to the reports, of Chinese troops and tanks on railroad cars coming into Russia? I mean, this is so bizarre. This is almost like a military movement, and I do know that, the Ben Benoon, the one with Israeli News Live, actually said that this is not a drill. This is not a drill, and so we've got to watch that closely.
Well, the timing would be just about right. We come up on trumpets on 9/11, so we may see some skirmishes or maybe nothing happens, but around that time, we should see the ignition of World War III if we haven't seen it before then. And then we have to be on guard, too, for possibly blanket blackout for the United States. They're already blocking it out. Maybe they are going down with the satellites or claiming they're going down, when in reality they're just simply going dark and their communications is going underground so that nobody knows what's doing. Remember, Donald Trump said, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell you when I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to do it. So a lot of this is speculation. The Russian intelligence is basically waiting, I guess, for a false flag, but now they've kind of modified that, as I said earlier, and maybe a false flag doesn't even have to occur. They go in and say, well, we had to do this because a false flag, they were going to use chemical weapons on innocent people, and we just had to stop it. The U.S. takes the high road. Unfortunately, however, we have no business in Syria, folks. None. Zero. We were not invited. We're in total violation of international law to be there. Assad invited Putin. He's invited Turkey. He's invited now, obviously, China. And Iran is in the mix. So here we go. I mean, this thing can explode overnight. You can wake up tomorrow morning and the war is on. we could wake up during the weekend and everything is down. We just don't know. So, as one of the folks said that is reporting all this, I hope you have put aside some food, put aside some water, et cetera, and prepared a little bit, because this could get real nasty real quickly. Hopefully, nothing happens. And just doesn't look that way. What do you think, Larry? I just don't think it looks good. I've always thought recently that there was something coming big. I just didn't know what it was.
Well, I think a lot of people, Stuart, has had that feeling that something was ominous and out there, and nobody could put their finger on it. But, you know, that's one of the things, and that's one of the things that has concerned you and I for some time, and we've tried to kind of hint to people to be prepared, and especially in communications. You know, the way that the news is now, you know, I tell you, it's so vanilla. There's absolutely no news in America. The only one carrying it is One America News, and they're carrying some of this information we're talking about. But even Fox and all mainstream media, why, we stay in constant funerals. I mean, 24/7, we just have funerals. That's it. There's no news in the world but that. And it's so sanitized, we don't know what's going on. So, you know, we've told people about shortwave radios and have the ability, some type of ability to have a communication or receive information. And we've stressed that, you know, over the years.
Anyway, here's exclusive. Iran moves missiles into Iraq in a warning to enemies. Iran has given ballistic missiles to Shiite proxies in Iraq and is developing the capacity to build more there to deter attacks on its interests in the Middle East, to give it a means to hit regional foes. And Iranian and Iraqi and Western sources have, I guess, verified it. And it says Iran has transferred short-range ballistic missiles to allies in Iraq over the last few months. 5 of the officials said it was helping those groups to start making their own missiles. These missiles have a range of about 200 to 700 kilometers, which puts Saudi Arabia's capital, the Israeli city of Tel Aviv, within striking distance. You may remember, who was it in Iran that said they were going to take out, was that Soleimani, that they'd take out Haifa and Tel Aviv? Larry, do you remember?
Yeah, that was, I think, the defense minister of Iran, and also Soleimani has said he was just waiting on the order.
Wow. Well, there you are, folks. I only did it for 45. I don't like to fill with, you know, no information, and I don't like to waste people's times. We either have news, but I don't like filling up 3 hours of no news, just trying to make noise. And that covers basically. You got anything else, Larry, before we leave?
Well, at the same time, Stuart, we still have the background, and there is a lot of electromagnetic activity occurring, and they're really posting very little of it. I saw an ominous warning to keep everyone's eyes peeled, because possibly the sun, even in this solar minimum, is doing very strange things, and they're saying that it's going to affect the weather and earthquakes, volcanoes, etc. in the days ahead. So we just need to really watch where all this.
Hello? Are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. He faded away there for a little bit. Yeah, I think everybody, we got to watch. Hello? Well, I think we've lost Larry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm fading in and out. I just hope that this doesn't continue. We just need to keep our nose to the grindstone, keep praying, and watch what's going on around us.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on. Remember the God factor, and he's the one in control. So we could have solar flares, we could have blackouts, we could have an EMP. We don't know. But when he's going to judge the United States, believe me, it's going to be severe. unlike anything you could even imagine. Anyway, good night, folks. Take care. Heads up. Remember, your redemption draweth nigh. Good night.